Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is a video idea that I've had for so long, and there's been reasons why I've filmed other things first, but I'm so happy to finally be getting around to this because I cannot tell you how excited I am for this video. Hopefully we're going to have some really good reads. So we're going to be reading 6 books in this vlog. Now, the concept of this, you'll already know by the title and thumbnail, is my Pokemon Shield team picks my reads. So I have created a spinny wheel here. Yeah, so we have a spinny wheel here. It's not wanting to focus properly, but that's fine. And this just has the names of all of my team on. So the Pokemon which I used when I played Pokemon Shield last were Toxtricity, Appleton, Graplocked, Dreadnought, Arcanine and Mudsdale. So what we're going to do, spin the wheel, and then each time we land on one I will remove it, and then we will spin again to find out which one we're going to read next, and so on and so forth. I have drawn them all, so I sketched them all out beforehand off camera. I always do that just to make sure that it's as accurate as I can get it as possible, because often if I'm filming my sketching process, my perspective is off because of the angle that I'm forced to look at it at. So just to explain, that's why often I sketch off camera, but I do hand sketch myself freehand. I'm going to show you the process of me colouring them in as I give you my thoughts on the books that correlate. Okay, so spin number 1. Okay, so our first book is going to be decided by Appleton. Okay, so obviously book number 1, we generated the Pokemon Appleton, and so I've tried to pick books whose colours match the colours on the book covers. So we've ended up going with Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands, and I really liked how this one started with some pace and some action sequences. I really like the dynamic between Emily and Wendell. Their banter and witty comments made me smile and giggle sometimes. The fact that their colleague was wanting to get them sacked at the beginning due to speculation which he had no proof for, just to benefit himself, was really annoying, but he did kind of redeem himself a little bit as the story went on. Also, Wendell getting poisoned at his own birthday party and struggling from that was crazy. Even though the chapters are fairly long, especially in comparison to other books, they don't really feel it. It feels like a quick and easy read, and the chapters don't feel as long as they are. I'm personally not a lover of footnotes, so I didn't read them. And I don't feel like it really made any difference to my reading experience, to be honest. So don't worry about being put off by them. I don't feel like they're particularly necessary to read. It just adds extra insight to the story if you do like them. There is more romance between Emily and Wendell in this one, and it is so cute, and I cannot wait to see the further developments in the 3rd book. I'm really looking forward to that one. There's also more of an aim to this one other than just her trying to gather research for her map, because also they're trying to find Wendell's door back to his realm too whilst exploring. And I really enjoyed this one, especially more than book 1, which I still enjoyed, but this one just felt like it had a bit more to it, and the pacing was so good, and it was witty, and I just had a great time overall with it. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I do love the Emily Wilde books. They are very fun and whimsical. And so overall, I gave this one a 4.25 stars. Okay, so spin for book number 2. Which one is that? It's decided by Toxtricity. So for book number 2, obviously the Pokemon we generated was Toxtricity, and I chose Us Against You as the book with the matching colour palette. I really enjoyed Beartown when I read it last year, and just like with Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, this meant that I was able to make some series progress and continue a series which I really enjoyed. So it's a great general fiction that follows multiple people in a small town and how they are treated, or often in some cases mistreated. It's a small town known for its hockey team, which has always been their shining hope to attract more revenue and just boost their economy. But after book 1, things are changing and lines are clearly being drawn in the sand. This book poses good questions on humanity and people's actions and the following consequences to those actions. It's very interesting how he does it, that at first he will so briefly and basically describe a few people and say that their stories will end up intertwining, and then get more in depth as you start unravelling the story like a piece of string. Things are layered and a bit more complex than they seem, and there is great character development and greater insights into specific individual characters. It covers the fallout and how people are treated and how things follow on from book 1 really well, I found. And I also thought it covers lots of topics, including sexism and unfair views and ideals. I love the formation and building of the new team and how they slowly start to respect each other more and get better as it goes on. You can really feel the sense of community and camaraderie in the small town with how Frederick Buckman writes these books, and it is just like ultimate found family vibes. So good. And it also shows how far people would go to protect the ones that they really love. There's good descriptions and discussions about quite a few difficult topics as well in this book, like I mentioned earlier, but even more, such as sexuality, mental health, addiction and abuse, just to name a few. I thought that this book was wholesome, emotional, tragic and beautiful all at the same time, which is a credit to how he writes. And I was so sad about one or two characters in particular, especially towards the end. My heart was breaking for them. And it was left off in such an interesting way that now I just simply cannot wait to finish the series and read the final book as soon as possible, because I'm not really sure where he's going to take it now from how this one ended, but it will be very interesting to see. So it comes as no surprise, I'm sure, that I rated this book 5 stars. No less would have been acceptable. Alright, book number 3. Our third read will be picked by Mudsdale. Now, for book 3, obviously we have generated Mudsdale. Now, this one I struggled to find a colour palette match, so this was the best I could come up with, and I ended up going with The Artist of Blackberry Grange, which I'd never heard of before, and I believe that this was like a free book that I got through like Amazon Prime First Reads or something that they've started doing each month, so I was quite glad to be able to get to one of those and try it out, and I didn't mind it. So this is the type of historical time period setting that I actually enjoy, where I personally find it much more enjoyable, as I said, and easier to follow when it's written in like a more modern prose and language that's easier to follow, so it's not sort of too overly wordy from like the time period. It's described as like as if it's modern, but obviously they have their historical furniture and utilities and things. and I felt that it was set up really well. It was quite fast paced and it had me interested and engaged, especially at the start, and it actually had an eerie, creepy atmosphere vibe to it. And I also found the aspect of caring for and looking after a family member very relatable, as it's something that I personally experience. And I also loved the artist aspect to it as well, as again, I'm an artist myself, so maybe I'm just a bit biased because I could relate to it on multiple levels. And it was enjoyment for me to see those kind of things. So maybe if you're not into that, it might not hit the same, but for me, I actually did really enjoy it from that perspective and on that level. I found it a bit bold and brash of our main character, Sadie, to just turn up suddenly unannounced at her great aunt's house and say she is staying. Like, would you not ring ahead first and like ask? That just feels a bit like self-imposing to me, but I do understand that she was doing it to help her great aunt, even though at first it was for very selfish reasons. Whilst I do feel sorry for Sadie and how men have treated her, I dislike that her initial intentions for going to stay with and help her great aunt were purely selfish, as I said, thinking in terms of inheritance and things like that. I'm glad that she changed her views and grew more caring and developed as a character throughout. It was nice to see some character development in it, even though it was a mystery thriller, I think. I appreciate that it's a bit wacky and out there, but it just commits, which is great, as some things often allude to something, but they don't fully commit to it, which then is a bit of a letdown, but this one didn't. And I didn't actually mind the kind of slightly paranormal aspects to it either, because, as I say, it leaned into it quite a bit. Sadie getting to know more of her family history and developing a bond with her great aunt was lovely to see, and it was nice seeing that development grow throughout the book. It was set in the 1900s, and it was done well, where things were still easy enough to follow, as I said earlier, but obviously they have older utensils, and the societal views and pressures are very different, but it felt quite realistic and reminiscent of other books that I've read that are set in those time periods. Obviously I've not experienced it myself, but from what we know of the time period, it felt very true to the situation. Lots of things are more frowned upon, especially for women. For example, having to be married and housewife and all those things. It sort of tackled those views quite head on, quite well as well. And there is a bit of a classist, sexist underlying discussion in the book, as the women are often scrutinised in a quote-unquote man's world. Sadie's family aren't very nice people at all. They irritated me. They're all so cruel, especially her selfish, vile brother Felix, who just wants to argue his way to getting everything he wants, including every single bit of inheritance that he can get his hands on, like a vulture. I did not like him at all. And so I did quite enjoy this book, so I ended up landing on a 3.5 stars for this one. Okay, time to pick read number 4. Which one are we going to get? We have Graplocked. So as you saw, for book number 4, we generated Graplocked, and I almost changed my mind on which book I was going to do for this one, but I was really excited to get to this one, so I stuck with my guns, and I'm glad I did. And for this one, obviously, we are tackling a novel love story. I really enjoyed how this was so creative and a perfect love letter to romance book lovers. It didn't take itself too seriously, and I like that we briefly got some glimpses of other characters from her other books in this one at one point as well. I really appreciate that it wasn't all only about the romance. We were focusing on our female main character coming to terms with who she is and what she really wants, and realising that she lost herself in previous relationships just to make the other person happy, but not doing the things that she wanted to do for herself. Which, even though I am not in a relationship and I've not experienced that necessarily myself, just on a personal individual level, I do feel like sometimes I'm too much of a people pleaser, that I personally can lose myself and my interests in trying to help and please others. So on a personal level, I could quite relate to that, and that was quite nice. It kept me very entertained throughout, and it felt a bit reminiscent of places like Stars Hollow and Gilmore Girls, where it's just this small town of various characters with weird individual wacky quirks getting together as couples, and everyone getting along and knowing everyone else's business. Very reminiscent also of like the found family aspect to like the Knock 'em Out series and the Chestnut Springs series, I felt, in terms of this small town, all these people getting in couples. I felt like it had great pacing and descriptions, and it seemed very like out of a romance storybook is the best way that I feel like I can describe it, because that's literally kind of what it is meant to be anyway. I assume that maybe the underlying message is that the female main character and another specific character who I won't mention because spoiler free, both end up at this town because they're lost after their respective relationships ended. Not in a physical sense, but like they were mentally and emotionally lost and needed to figure themselves out. So was that maybe how they were able to go there, because the town doesn't actually exist? It would have been nice to kind of have it explained a bit, but I feel like it was trying to be not so on the nose and you were meant to kind of discover it for yourself sort of thing. So that's the underlying theme and message that I took away from it. I don't know if that's right or not. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But as I say, I could be wrong. I thought that this was a fabulous read though, and I actually really enjoy her books, and I've enjoyed her previous ones as well. And so this one I gave a 4.5 stars. And now finally on to our last spin, because obviously this will give us number 5, and then whichever one is left will be number 6. So our 5th read is going to be decided by Dreadnought, which is great. And then that only leaves us with Arcanine to be number 6. I'm sure it will come as no surprise that my selection for the Dreadnought pick is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I have been anticipating really wanting to get to this book for so long, so I had to fit it in here somehow, and I love her writing. I think this is the 3rd book of hers that I've read, I believe. Atlas 6, Gifted and Talented, and now this one, and I've really enjoyed them all. I do really enjoy her writing style. This book had very developed and fleshed out characters. You really get a sense of who they are and how they feel on a much deeper level. There was lots of deep mental health representation, which I felt was pretty accurate to experiences which I personally have come across. Obviously it varies a lot for each individual, I'm aware. I could really relate to quite a few aspects of this story as well though, so I think that's why it resonated with me more. like the art and the artist elements and also the mental health parts. Like, it was just it felt quite tailored to me, which I do think that if you're not into that, I can understand why you could find this book a bit boring and a bit wordy and hard to connect to. But for me personally, obviously that wasn't an issue. I absolutely devoured the writing. I loved it. It was so descriptive, but not just surface level. I underlined so many quotes. I'm pretty sure my pen was going to run out. And this is the most annotated book I now have. And I enjoyed that it was just that it wasn't just a spicy, silly, cliche romance, which they can be fun every so often, but generally aren't my favourites, as I'm not big into spice, and this book was more of a love story than a romance. And instead there was so much depth and hidden areas that we got to explore as we went. It's definitely more like literary fiction love story than a romance, which was nice. That is my preference, after all. I love how it all comes full circle and relates back to the title and the bees. And as I said, I can totally understand how, if aspects of this don't relate with you, some people could easily find it boring, as not much happens in terms of like action-packed plot. It's more just a character study, and we're following these two people and then falling in love and everything they feel and face together and the hurdles which they have to overcome. I didn't want it to end. It was beautiful and easily 5 stars and one of my favourites of this year by far. So finally, for our last book to match to Arcanine, I chose Iron Flame. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was apprehensive about this book before starting it, as I had not heard the greatest reviews about it, but I wanted to give it a chance and develop my own thoughts on it, and I own this one and Onyx Storm, and I would like to continue the series. I just was very sceptical about this one going in, because even though I enjoyed Fourth Wing, but not to the level that, like, everyone else obsessed over it, so yeah. It was interesting for me going into this one, trying to keep an open mind. However, I did feel that it was just way too long overall. And then I kept forgetting what had happened because of that, and it ruined my enjoyment of the book a little bit. My favourite part is the Sassy Dragon's input, especially Andana in the last, like, third of the book. There's so many characters and locations. I was getting so lost and confused though as to like what was actually happening. And then like there were runes and I was like, are we suddenly in Shadowhunters? Like, what is going on? We got some answers and explanations, but mostly I just ended up confused and with more questions than I had before. It didn't exactly grip my attention, like I was a bit bored at times, but I did listen to it all, and my attention does often wander when I listen to books, but I'm glad that I listened to it, because honestly I think if I was reading this physically, which I did have the physical book and I was considering doing that at some points, but if I would have read it physically I would have probably given up, so at least I got through it by listening. It wasn't my favourite and it definitely felt like a filler book. I think she could have cut quite a bit out because a lot of it just felt very like mundane and like what's the point. I can't go too in depth and say much about this book since it's a sequel, but I did like the development that we get between Xaden and Violet and the things that we find out. However, since the book was so long, as I said, it did feel a bit repetitive at times and kind of like they just kept going around in circles. And I can see what people mean about it being very similar to book 1. I wouldn't say it's a carbon copy because they do go through different things, so I did feel it was different enough, but I just found it quite slow and a bit boring, personally. And so one or probably two characters have a second signet, from what I can understand. Obviously, I'm hoping that's going to get developed more in book 3, and I really hope book 3 is a bit faster paced and a bit more enjoyable. The ending went kind of intense and crazy again, with the final battle leading to problems for many characters. I did enjoy the ending, like I felt the pacing of that and the action of it was more what I was kind of hoping for from majority of the book. I'm not gonna lie, Andana and Taryn, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. Basically, Violet's dragons are the true MVPs of this book for me, though, and that says a lot, since Andana actually isn't actively in it much, like, she's asleep most of the book, but their remarks and comments saved this book for me. And I did like some of the secrets and information that we got in this one, though. Like, some of the revelations were good, so I'm not completely bashing this book. Like, I enjoyed it enough, but I hope that the next one is a bit more, has a bit more to it, substance. So overall, I rated this one 3 stars.